Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Coffee with Commercial, protecting yourself and your business from a viral attack. I'm your host, Emma Kettle, Commercial Sales Executive for Step One Tech in Colorado. And joining me this morning is Vlad Aleksiev, VP of Commercial Cloud and Software Solutions. Vlad has worked extensively as a corporate CIO and is now working as a strategic executive for some of our local clients. Obviously has a lot of great insight into our topic today. So, hi Vlad, what's in your cup?
Hi Emma, I've got my cup of Joe. It's my Starbucks brew, and yeah, I am just getting ready to launch into this discussion topic. Looking forward to it.
Oh, we are so glad to have you here today. So thanks for joining us. I also have my coffee again in my favorite Step One Tech cup. I know we have a lot of content to get through today, Vlad, and everything we're about to show our audience is not new. We all know phishers and scammers are out there, but they're running rampant right now in the current situation. So this talk is simply meant to give a refresher on best practices needed to ensure these surging threats occurring are unsuccessful in reaching the self-isolating workforce. So with that, Vlad, what is going on out there? Can you give us an overview of the current environment companies are having to navigate?
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. And what we've seen during this very difficult time for a lot of folks is that you've got businesses really trying to figure out how to kind of swiftly enable their remote workforce in a safe and responsible way. So with a lot of folks that are working from home, the scammers are really leveraging this pandemic to try to steal your corporate information, your personal information, and your money. So attackers and hostile actors are really just capitalizing on the fear and the frenzy that's kind of generated around the coronavirus pandemic. So what we've seen is just in this last month, 100,000 new web domains were registered that had the terms like COVID or Corona, and they were considered, many of them considered malicious. In fact, we think right now there are about 500,000 spoofed websites that are trying to steal people's credentials or private information. So it's really become a real big issue right now as everyone is trying to work, a lot of people trying to work from home, accessing their corporate environments.
You said 500,000 spoof websites, Vlad?
Yeah, it's grown almost by 400% since January.
Oh my goodness. Well, in addition to that, I mean, what are some of the other tactics you're seeing bad actors utilizing these days, Vlad, to not only pull that personal information, but to also pull company and proprietary information?
Yeah, what we are seeing is really a large gamut of different types of scams. And, a lot of these some of these are traditional, but what we're seeing is all of them are surrounding, the pandemic and how to take advantage of really, employees and their families. So we're seeing a lot of, treatment scams, counterfeit, treatments and equipment. Scammers are trying to sell products that claim they prevent or treat, diagnose, COVID-19. There's a lot of counterfeit products out there trying to sell, personal protective equipment or N95 masks, goggles, gloves, things like that. And what we're seeing is that a lot of these scammers are even using legitimate platforms like Amazon and Walmart to try to, separate you from your money. A big one is around the supply scams too. This is where you've got, just, household items like, toilet paper, and scammers are selling them and then they never deliver the order. Charity scams are, been around for a while, but anything now related to the CDC or the WHO or other agencies, definitely look at those because they're leveraging those names and those organizations to really try to figure out how to, inject malware and hijack your information. And in phishing scams, everyone I think we've all been kind of sensitized to phishing scams, but that's still the #1 attack vector, hands down. We've got fake CDC emails going out again, claiming to offer information around the virus. Got emails that are all these emails are trying to deliver malware to try to really lock your computer, and then they demand payment, or they put it in a payload and try to steal your information. So there's been a huge increase of these type of malicious emails, and a lot of them are trying to install ransomware either on your personal system or trying to get to a corporate system, because they know that corporate companies will pay ransomwares, which is not advisable, but ends up happening. So they really try to go laterally from your home to a corporate environment. And then we get into the app scams that are popping up, and we'll talk about some of that later. We've got some tech scams as well. So I've got a section kind of on what to do with mobile devices. Provider scams are probably the worst that I've seen, is where someone is pretending to be a doctor or a hospital that's treating a friend or relative, and they're demanding payment for a treatment. And then we get into sort of the investment and financial scams. I mean, these are the typical scams, again, all around the COVID-19 outbreak, where scammers are promoting small stock companies, doing the pump and dump of micro cap stocks, and then cashing out. And then also, you're going to start seeing notifications go out that look like they're coming from your mutual fund advisors or portfolio managers. Again, trying to just feed on the fear of people losing their investment through these tumultuous times. And then attackers are also capitalizing on financial problems that people are running into as well. With a lot of layoffs or furloughs happening, they're using that information also as well. So be really careful on what you post on social media, because that's how they're getting that information to target you. And then of course the tax payment scams are going to be really hitting here pretty soon, especially around the government providing the relief funding. So people just have to be much more vigilant. The latest one that's getting a lot of press right now is the Zoom, what they're calling Zoom bombing that's occurring, and it's it's pretty kind of ridiculous, where people are basically hijacking meetings and then posting obscenities or other things like that. You just want to be real careful on how you use Zoom, because there's ways to protect against that. But a lot of people don't know how to kind of configure their Zoom sessions to make sure that they don't have people that can basically hijack your meeting.
Absolutely, Vlad. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Zoom's daily users have gone up from 10 million to 200 million just in the last month alone.
That's right. They are now, they've been the #1 downloaded app on Apple and Google. So, it's been a huge spike. It's a great application, for really collaboration and just making sure everyone stays in touch. But also there's just, they've found some security, flaws, and people are taking advantage of that.
Absolutely. And of course, it's trial and error here. You just hope that the error is minimal and the trial is quick.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, with that, Vlad, I mean, obviously, huge increase in the work from home workforce. What are some of the tactics you're seeing? Actually, I apologize. Can you describe the differences between supporting that corporate infrastructure that most of the workforce is used to versus supporting infrastructure and security in a home environment?
Yeah, what's happening is really that it's this asymmetrical defense that they're taking advantage of, that you've got corporations that really have resources to manage security. So they really try to keep, these attackers and hackers out. So what's happening is that they're just going after the soft targets. And because now we've got families back home, we've got college students, maybe parents, grandparents, it's just a much richer environment for these attackers to try to infiltrate people's home network and their systems. So companies just really have to be prepared to help their employees with work from home. to give them guidance and really technical understanding of how to protect the home environment. Not only to protect the corporate assets and data, but really to protect the employees during these really difficult times.
Absolutely, Vlad. I mean, obviously, again, a lot of people at home right now. So how does a home office environment compare to an office infrastructure?
Yeah, and this is what's really interesting is that there's really more things that are common that are unique. I mean, really, in the home environment you have very similar infrastructure components. You've got laptops, desktops, you've got mobile devices, and all these need to be protected to some degree. So in the infrastructure, I think the router is really the number one access point. It's equivalent to a firewall at a corporate environment. And then you have all these network attached devices like the Synologies and QNAPs of the world. A lot of companies, will have storage networks, so there is a lot of similarities. And again, then you get into the desktops where, you've got even a more diverse mix of desktops at the home because you've got the employer provided equipment, but then all the personal devices the employee has, and then all the family member devices as well. And then finally you get into the mobile devices and the iPhones and the Androids and tablets, and they have their own risk profile that a lot of corporations don't have to deal with because they've got different controls in a corporate environment than in the home.
Absolutely, Vlad. And we did get a quick question, which I do want to touch on from our last slide, but are the Zoom hackers hacking into actual live video chat sessions users are hosting? And the answer is yes.
Yes. Yeah, they're hacking in and they're able to actually participate in the session. So they're able to take control of the whiteboard features. They're able to post things. So yeah, they basically become just like a regular user, on those sessions.
Yeah, pretty scary stuff. So Vlad, now that we've identified what aspects of the home office environment to be aware of, let's talk about how to protect these elements.
All right, let's jump right into it. So, the very first thing I think companies need to do really is identify those key personnel that are providing, services that could be even considered like, frontline defense during the pandemic, where their information and the systems and the data that they're working on are very critical for the success of, meeting our needs. And they need some additional help, some support, because if, God forbid that they become ill, we've got to be able to, continue the, maybe if they're a supply chain buyer and they're trying to, get equipment to where it's needed, someone needs to be able to jump right in and be able to help do that while they're recovering. So really just, providing, extra support for certain personnel, but then also just making sure that the whole community, the whole employee community is informed. And that's really what we're trying to do is just make sure people are informed of the risks that are out there. The biggest risk area and kind of the number one method that hackers have used to get into home networks is really going through unsecure Wi-Fi routers. So this is really where there's remote code execution bugs that router companies are trying to patch. The key here is really just making sure that you disable any of the services that are not needed on these routers. Make sure you have strong passwords. And also just make sure that firmware is updated regularly. And there's easy ways to do that. Google gives great instructions, on how to upgrade your router firmware. But that's probably the number one, risk area. Then you get into, these great storage area or network attached storage devices, which are fantastic. They run music streaming services for, your family, or they have all the videos or photos that you guys collect. But those have so many capabilities that hackers are using the sophistication of these devices to really just establish a foothold in the home. So again, making sure that you disable, services that aren't needed, but but also turn on two-factor authentication on those devices. A lot of them are very sophisticated, and two-factor authentication is a great tool for anyone to use, both home and corporate.
Absolutely, Vlad.
Yeah, yeah, and then we get into the Internet of Things devices, and this is where we've just seen a huge surge of devices within the house that have been exposed because people haven't made the passwords unique, or they haven't made them sophisticated enough, or that the firmware hasn't been updated on these. I think it's really key to just make sure that you keep on top of these devices. In a sense, there's almost more devices that homes have to figure out how to take care of than really a single person can do. But you got to do you got to at least know where to look so you can be as efficient as possible. A lot of these techniques really are just following some of the enterprise security standard best practices. So there's single sign-on services. A lot of access management solutions. Password managers are a great tool for someone to use in the home to be able to make sure that their passwords are unique and sophisticated, and try to not really what they're trying to do is just help people manage the number of accesses they need to do in a way that gives them the most protection.
Definitely, Vlad. And obviously a lot of risk companies are taking on right now. And we'll continue to go over these solutions that really will reduce or improve your security posture while your employees are working from home. So Vlad, if you want to continue on protecting workstation endpoints, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're getting kind of into the really where most of the attacks are happening is right there at the workstation. So how does an employer, make sure their employees are protected? The number one tool really is making sure you have a very solid VPN solution. And here we've even in the last 30 days, we've helped customers either upgrade their solution because they weren't able to handle the load of all the employees, a lot of employees at home, or we've brought together a brand new solution using some cloud technologies through AWS and Microsoft Office 365. So this is a really easy way to make sure that your communication is encrypted and you're getting everything that the employee needs that's in the corporate environment. The two-factor authentication, I can't say enough about this. There's no reason now not to have two-factor on all corporate systems, because you've got your phone, your cell phone that has the agent that can be installed. So that's your second factor. It now becomes a very easy, simple implementation for a lot of companies. And then we get into some of the cloud resources that, just like in the corporate environment, you're using cloud resources and different AWS or Google or Microsoft services. Well, the same thing at home as well. But when you're on a corporate system, follow some best practices, share links, in different collaboration suites instead of sending actual attachments. There's a lot of ways to kind of leverage the cloud so that you're keeping your company safe, but the employee is also keeping their environment safe as well. And then we get into some of the basic kind of blocking and tackling, make sure your workstations, all the data is backed up. This is the number one defense against ransomware, because what happens is, if you don't want to pay a ransom if you can really avoid it. So you really have to do a recovery of your data. You want to be able to first block ransom, and we'll talk about that, but at least a way to kind of recover from an attack. And what we've seen is a lot of some of the vendors that some of our customers are using are getting attacked with ransomware. So fortunately, our customers have ransomware protection, but you always have to be careful with those lateral attacks that can happen when someone is infected.
Which is why it's so important, Vlad, to not only know your environment, but be mindful of your vendors' environments as well, so you can continue to protect yourself.
Yes, exactly, Emma, because I think, what we don't realize is, how integrated and how coupled we are in this very integrated world of having a lot of different services connected between companies. So just making sure that, your vendors are doing everything they can to protect themselves so that they can protect you. And then finally, we're getting into some of the, the basics of patching. And I know patching is, something that's been, everyone needs to patch their systems. Well, the problem now with work from home is that a lot of corporate systems may not patch remote systems. They may wait for the system to come back on the local network and then do patching. So corporations now have to really think about how are they going to manage the workforce and making sure everyone is patched. Even as much as if there's not a way to do patching remotely in a secure way, then making sure that people don't go onto the corporate network that don't have the right patches or even virus protection. And then finally, the ransomware protection, I can't say enough about it because there's so many times where companies will get hit by ransomware just by someone, clicking a link. And then they end up, either paying the ransom and just getting reinfected. And there's lots of ways to protect yourself from getting infected. But then really to remove it, it's a very known process, but a lot of companies don't understand what steps to take. So just making sure that everyone's kind of aware of how to deal with a ransomware attack.
Absolutely, Vlad. And we did get another question, which leads us perfectly into our next slide, protecting mobile devices. How do we protect our mobile devices, especially kids' devices, from viruses, hackers, etc.? And are there services that can be installed for added security?
Yes, Emma. So what we have seen is really the mobile devices, the best way to manage them from a corporate perspective is to really use some of the mobile device management tools that are out there. And every major cloud vendor and even lots of third parties have great solutions there to do that. Microsoft and Amazon and even Google. And then for kids systems, there's also a lot of solutions out there to really not only for their laptops but also for their mobile devices to just just to know what applications they have running, and then second to just make sure that if they are clicking links that at least you as a parent know what's happening on their devices. Again, because mobile devices just really are more vulnerable in general, there's a lot of ways to try to keep those mobile devices from infecting other systems. But it is a kind of a challenge for a lot of companies to do. So what we've seen is the mobile devices, the latest trend is sort of this voice scams, phishing attacks that are happening, and this is really where it's basically robocalls that are trying to get you to say something or hit a button and then push you over to a more sophisticated attacker to try to scam you. Same thing with the SMS texting, the smishing. What's happening is they're using the coronavirus, as a way to kind of get your attention and post something that looks like it's from a legitimate source, and have you click on a link in the text itself. And typically this is not how alerts are being sent out. So you just have to be really careful. There are some public alerts that do go out, but anything that you see that's sort of coronavirus, infection rates or local information is probably a scam. And again, just being real careful on all your instant messaging communication, as well as social media. There's a lot of scams that are going out there. The number one issue with mobile devices is really not keeping the operating system up to date. So that's something that the mobile device management can take care of, but in a lot of cases you've got to make sure your family is doing that so that their devices are protected. And then the big one that's been really spreading, especially on Android right now, is an application that basically is providing what you think is a service of real-time virus tracking information. But in reality, it's loading a payload that's ransomware. So again, just keeping, go to the sources for information directly. Don't go through third parties. And a lot of the tools I think I've already kind of mentioned, is really the mobile device management. There's VPN solutions for mobile devices. And again, back up your data on all those devices.
And also,
finally,
Vlad,
yeah.
Google and Snopes are your best friends, everyone. I mean, just look it up on Google. If it's been happening and if it's been identified as a scam or a phishing scam, it'll be on Google. It will be on Snopes.
Yeah, that's right. And this is where we really want employees or employers to tell their employees what's the best way to contact their IT groups and teams, and security teams as well, because really the only way we can all help each other and protect each other is making sure that we report, any issues, any suspicious activity to those teams to be able to help the whole company and our family as well.
Absolutely, Vlad. You and I both know the only way we're all going to get through this is if we work together.
That's right. Yep.
So in addition to utilizing, your CIO as an informational source and utilizing those technical folks within your company, Vlad, what resources are available to the public right now to help both educate on and report cyber attacks?
Yeah, the best thing to do right now is always go to the source. So it's either the CDC or the WHO. Don't use any third-party or other sites that claim they have, up-to-date information. And then use other, government agencies as well, like, even the Department of Education, the Justice Department, and the FBI also have, great information on not only what's happening with the virus from a spread, but also what are the fraud and the scams that are out there that people should be aware of.
Definitely, Vlad. And then we have our resource for actually reporting. Exactly.
Yeah, that's
reporting
right.
On
that's right.
cyber attacks.
Yeah. This is it's something that people can do really quickly. It gives the FBI through the Internet Crime Complaint Center information so they can start tracking down the hackers and try to protect, either try to recover what they've stolen, or at least be able to help prevent future attacks to other folks. So just always go to your resource to really, if you've been a victim, you should go and file, just so we know what's really happening out there.
Thanks so much for that, Vlad. And we are looking to be close on time, but we do want to allow our audience some time to ask some questions and get some answers from Vlad. He's a great resource for this kind of thing, especially in this time. So we'll give it a couple of minutes to get some questions in. Vlad, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Really great content you've provided. We're so grateful to have you as part of our team. So thanks again.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think I think it's great to just try to share as much information and really just help people during this time figure out how to navigate around all the threats and just keep everybody safe.
Definitely. The question we do have currently is, will these slides be posted somewhere? If you want to send your email or send me an email, I'll have my contact information on this next slide. We can send you this PowerPoint presentation directly. I do not believe we will be posting it publicly. However, again, as our audience, we want to make sure that you have all of this information, at your fingertips. So feel free to send me an email and I'll get you this PowerPoint presentation. And Vlad, it doesn't look like we have any questions. So do you have anything to close us out?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody, to stay safe. Please reach out if you do have any questions. We do offer, services around a lot of this for companies. So, but also just to kind of help companies, educate their employees. We've got lots of great material there so they can hand that out to their employees.
Absolutely, and as Vlad mentioned before, utilize your corporate resources, everyone. That's what they're there for. They're here to protect you. And then any of the topics today that we touched on from a tools and tactics perspective, Step 1 Tech can absolutely help you with that. We've got locations across the country, East Coast, Colorado, and beyond that. So please utilize us if for any reason you don't have a VPN or any of these tools that can provide extra security during this time. So with that, we're going to wrap up with the last slide. Vlad, if you can pop us to our contact page. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We hope you got some really useful information, and join us next Friday, same time, for our next discussion. Bye now.